They won't have you, my snowflower, not even if I have to turn to ice." The cry tore from elderly Anya's throat, a sound lacerated by the howl of 1,000 hungry wolves that cut through Yakutia's icy air. Her eyes, once weary from ages past, burned with an ancestral fury as she wielded the ceremonial axe, a last bastion between her terrified granddaughter and the savage horde. Sharp claws tore at the frozen ground, hunger painted on every approaching snout, and the heat of the predator's icy breath already scorched her skin. Just as the final howl seemed to seal their fate, a seismic tremor erupted from the tundra, and what emerged from the blizzard defied everything known about Yakutia's ferocity. What emerged from the blizzard was not one wolf, nor 10, nor 100. It was a white colossus, a polar bear of mythical proportions, with fur that blended with the storm and eyes that seemed to carry the wisdom of 1,000 winters. Its heavy steps made the earth tremble, each breath a dense vapor in the frigid air. Anya, with her axe still raised, felt her blood run cold, not from fear of the bear, but from shock and disbelief that paralyzed her. The giant did not lunge at them, nor at the wolves. Instead, it positioned itself between the elderly woman and the pack, a living wall of strength and mystery. A primordial roar erupted from the bear's chest, vibrating the tundra deeper and more terrifying than any howl. The hungry horde, invincible moments before, halted, their eyes, full of savagery, now reflected genuine terror. The wolves retreated, first hesitantly, then in a disordered stampede, quickly disappearing into the darkness and snow, tails between their legs, fear overcoming hunger. Anya collapsed to her knees, the axe falling loosely from her numb hands. Her body trembled uncontrollably, not only from the cold, but exhausted and drained by the adrenaline abandoning her. Ilara, crouched and silent behind her grandmother, let out a muffled sob, her small arms wrapped around Anya's legs with desperate strength. The elderly woman turned, embracing her granddaughter with what little energy remained, feeling the warmth of the tiny body against hers, a precious reminder of the life that had almost been lost. "We're safe, my snowflower. We're safe," Anya whispered, the words scratching her dry throat as she stroked Ilara's tangled hair. Her teary eyes rose to the bear. It stood there imposing, watching them with stillness, contrasting with its explosive appearance. There was no threat in its gaze, only an enigmatic depth. It seemed like a guardian, an ancient spirit of Yakutia that had manifested to intervene in their destiny. As Anya and Ilara clung to each other, the polar bear slowly turned, without a sound, without a farewell glance. Its colossal silhouette merged with the blizzard, indistinguishable from the relentless white of the landscape. In a few seconds, it had vanished as mysteriously as it appeared, leaving behind only the heavy silence of the tundra and the imprint of its giant paws in the fresh snow. Anya took a deep breath, the icy air burning her lungs. The wound on her arm, where a wolf had scratched her, throbbed more intensely and blood trickled, staining the snow. But the physical pain was insignificant compared to the relief that flooded her. She had fought, sacrificed, and nature, in some inexplicable way, had responded to her despair. It was a miracle. A gift from the ancestral spirits, a reminder that, even in the depths of eternal winter, hope could emerge in the most improbable forms. Ilara, still trembling, lifted her head. Her large, dark eyes, full of tears, met Anya's. "Grandma." "The bear," she stammered, her voice faint, almost inaudible. Anya hugged her granddaughter tightly. "Yes, my little one. The white guardian of Yakutia saved us. We will never forget this day." The matriarch knew this story would be told and retold, a testament to resilience and the mystical connection between humans and nature, a thread of hope woven into the icy tapestry of their existence. The journey back to the village would be long and dangerous, but now they had new strength, a new faith. Anya, with a sigh that seemed to pull the last remnant of air from her tired lungs, helped Ilara to her feet. The girl, still pale and with eyes teary from the cold, clung to her grandmother's gloved hand, a small point of warmth and security in the vast ice desert. The wound on her arm throbbed, a constant reminder of the battle. But the pain was a small sacrifice compared to her granddaughter's precious life. The silence that followed the bear's departure was almost more frightening than the wolf's howl, a heavy void that seemed to swallow every sound, leaving only the whisper of the wind. "Come, my snowflower, home awaits us," Anya said, her voice hoarse but firm, a thread of determination that refused to break. She knew that every step would be a challenge, every gust of icy air a test of her endurance. The snow, once an ally that camouflaged the bear, was now a deep obstacle, making walking difficult. Ilara stumbled occasionally, but Anya held her firmly, her gaze attentive to every movement of the girl, protecting her like a hawk protects its chick. Fear was still present in Ilara's eyes, but her trust in her grandmother was an invisible and unbreakable shield. As they advanced slowly, Anya felt the weight of years and exhaustion in every muscle. Her thoughts turned to the bear. Who was he? A forest spirit, as the ancients told in whispered legends around campfires. A manifestation of YAKUT, the goddess of hunting and childbirth, who had interceded on their behalf. Ancestral wisdom, so present in her life and passed down through generations, now mingled with a mystery that defied all logic. She knew there were no human words to describe what they had witnessed, only the profound certainty that they had been touched by something greater than themselves, a primordial force of nature. With each arduous step, Anya relived the moments of terror. The image of 1,000 hungry wolves, the bear's thunderous roar. The adrenaline that had propelled her in the fight now drained away, leaving her with a weakness that threatened to fell her in the snow. But the thought of Ilara, of the future of their lineage, was the anchor that kept her standing, stronger than any gale. She squeezed her granddaughter's hand. "Are you cold, dear?" Ilara shook her head negatively, but Anya felt the tremor in her small fingers, understanding the child's persistent fear. "Don't worry, we'll soon be by the fire, and Mommy and Daddy will be there," Anya tried to reassure her, though she knew Ilara's parents had long since departed, taken by a cruel winter, leaving the girl in her care. It was a small lie, a sweet illusion to keep hope alive in the child's heart, a promise of warmth and security. The truth was that Anya was all Ilara had, and Ilara was all Anya had in this vast, icy world. The monotonous white landscape seemed endless under the grey sky. The icy wind whipped their faces, turning skin to stone and stealing warmth. Anya pulled Ilara's fur hood further down, protecting her as much as possible from the elements. The village, a cluster of lights and warmth, seemed like a distant, almost unattainable dream. The matriarch knew that upon arrival they would face not only overwhelming physical exhaustion, but also the task of sharing their unbelievable story. How would they convince others of what had happened? Skepticism was an enemy as cold and relentless as winter itself. Her body protested with every fiber, but her spirit refused to yield. The image of the bear, majestic and protective, was etched in her mind, a symbol of hope and nature's hidden strength. She felt that this encounter was not just a rescue, but a calling, a reminder that life in Yakutia, however brutal, contained wonders and mysteries that transcended human understanding. Ilara, sensing her grandmother's unwavering determination, squeezed her hand in response, a silent pact of resilience. Together, step by step, they continued their journey, carrying not only the weight of the snow, but also the burden of a miraculous secret and the promise of an uncertain future. But now, more than ever, filled with renewed faith and hope, Anya felt every fiber of her body cry out for rest, but Ilara's small, cold hand in her glove was the flame that warmed her determination. The village, still invisible in the growing darkness, seemed like a distant mirage, a refuge that refused to draw closer. The wind, once just a whisper, now howled more fiercely, raising snow whirls that whipped their faces and made every step a battle against white blindness. Ilara, her face hidden in her grandmother's shoulder, sobbed softly, fear still nestled in her small heart, more persistent than the cold. "We're almost there, my snowflower," Anya whispered, her voice hoarse, but with a sweetness that tried to ward off the shadows of terror. She squeezed her granddaughter's hand, conveying all the love and security she could. The wound on her arm throbbed, a dull ache that mingled with exhaustion. But Anya ignored it, focusing only on Ilara's ragged breathing and the slow rhythm of her own steps. How would she tell what happened? How would she describe the fury of 1,000 wolves and the majestic appearance of the White Guardian without being considered a delirious old woman, consumed by cold and despair? Anya knew that the community, though united by necessity and tradition, was also skeptical. Legends were told around the fire, yes, but they were stories of the past, not present events. The idea of a giant polar bear, a spirit of the tundra, intervening to save 2 lives, was something that defied the logic of their daily existence, where survival was a tangible struggle against merciless nature. The matriarch felt the weight of this truth, a heavy burden added to her physical exhaustion. Her shoulders stooped slightly, not only from the cold, but from the responsibility of protecting her granddaughter and, now, of protecting the truth of her miracle. Suddenly, Ilara stopped, pulling Anya's hand. Her large eyes pointed forward, where a faint yellowish light flickered in the darkness. "Grandma! The village!" she exclaimed, her voice choked with emotion and cold, but with a glimmer of hope that warmed Anya's heart. The sight of those lights, fragile yet persistent, was like a balm for their exhausted souls. Home, warmth, safety, everything they had dreamed of during the hours of terror and the arduous journey. Anya smiled, a tired smile that barely reached her eyes, but was sincere. "Yes, my little one, we are home." She quickened her pace, new energy propelled by the proximity of refuge. Each light that grew clearer was a step towards salvation, but also towards the challenge of sharing her story. The matriarch knew she could not hide the truth from Ilara, nor from herself. What had happened was real, undeniable proof that nature, in its vastness and mystery, held secrets that the human mind could barely conceive. As they approached the first cabins, the smell of wood smoke and cooking food enveloped them, a warm invitation that promised relief. Some figures were already moving near the entrances, preparing for the night's retreat. Anya squeezed Ilara's hand one last time, a gesture of strength and unity. Her eyes met her granddaughter's, and in them Anya saw not only diminishing fear, but a new spark of courage, a silent understanding that they had shared something extraordinary. Together, they had faced death and witnessed a miracle. Now together, they would face skepticism and disbelief, but with the unwavering faith that the truth, however fantastic, would always find its way into the hearts of those willing to listen. The White Guardian had saved their lives, and their story would be the legacy of their survival. As Anya and Ilara stumbled into the village perimeter, the sweet, comforting smell of wood smoke and the muffled murmur of human voices enveloped them like a long-awaited embrace. The cabin lights, once distant points, now shone with an inviting warmth, revealing the silhouettes of some villagers hurrying inside, fleeing the biting cold. The sight of home was such an intense relief that Anya's legs threatened to give way, but Ilara's small, still cold hand in her glove kept her steady, a living reminder of the life she had protected. A sharp cry broke the air when a woman, who had just emerged from her cabin to gather firewood, spotted them. It was Lena, the weaver, whose wide eyes expressed a mixture of shock and concern. Anya, Ilara, by the spirits, what happened? Her voice, usually soft, was laden with panic. Other neighbors, drawn by the cry, began to emerge from their homes, their faces illuminated by lanterns, transforming into masks of astonishment as they saw the state of the two, covered in snow and bearing the visible mark of danger. Anya, her face marked by exhaustion and cold, and the wound on her arm, visibly bleeding against the sleeve of her parka, tried to form words, but her throat was dry and hoarse. She merely pressed Ilara against her, a gesture that spoke volumes about the terror they had faced. Ilara, in turn, was pale and trembled uncontrollably, her eyes fixed on the ground, unable to look at the worried faces surrounding them. The smell of blood and the aura of danger that enveloped them were palpable, silencing the small crowd. Lena ran to them, arms outstretched. Come in. You're freezing." She helped Anya steady herself, noticing the elderly woman's rigid body and Ilara's constant trembling. Other villagers approached, some with expressions of doubt, others with pure compassion, their gazes fixed on Anya's wound. Elder Boris, with his white beard and keen gaze, watched Anya with an intensity that seemed to want to unravel the secret in her eyes. He noticed the ceremonial axe, still dusted with snow, strapped to Anya's belt, and the tension in her stooped shoulders. Inside Lena's cabin, the warmth of the fire was an immediate balm. Ilara was wrapped in warm blankets and given a bowl of steaming broth, but her lips still trembled, and she couldn't eat. Anya, sitting heavily on a wooden bench, felt the warmth penetrate her bones, but her mind was still in turmoil. The pain in her arm was a constant reminder, but the greater pain was the fear of not being believed. How to explain the inexplicable, how to make the community understand the magnitude of the miracle that had saved them without considering her a delirious old woman. Wolves. Many wolves, Anya managed to whisper, her voice still weak and raspy. Lena and the others exchanged glances, their faces reflecting the gravity of the situation. The threat of wolves was a constant reality in Yakutia, but the intensity in Anya's gaze suggested something far beyond the ordinary. Boris knelt beside her, his eyes gentle but firm. "Anya, my sister, tell us everything. What happened out there?" The matriarch took a deep breath, the warm air filling her lungs. She looked at Ilara, who, despite her exhaustion, watched her with a mixture of apprehension and expectation. It was for Ilara that she needed to be strong, for Ilara that the truth had to be told. The story of the White Guardian was not just hers, but theirs, a legacy that needed to be shared, however difficult. She knew that skepticism would be great, but the faith that had been born in that icy wilderness was even greater. With a nod, Anya began to speak, words flowing slowly, each laden with the weight of terror and wonder. The community gathered around, their faces a canvas of emotions, as the matriarch began to unravel the mystery of the eternal winter. Anya, her voice choked with emotion and exhaustion, began her narrative. Words scratching her dry throat. At first hesitant, they gained strength as the matriarch relived each moment of terror and miracle. She described the relentless hunger of 1,000 wolves, their eyes glowing like embers in the icy darkness, the howl that seemed to tear the very soul of the tundra and freeze the blood in their veins. Her gestures, once stiff from the cold, now became expressive, her wrinkled hands drawing in the air the image of the savage horde advancing on her and little Ilara. The community listened in sepulchral silence, some with wide eyes of astonishment, others with brows furrowed in disbelief. Boris, the white-bearded elder, sitting by the fire, watched Anya with an intensity that seemed to penetrate her soul, seeking the truth. "They were everywhere," Anya narrated, her voice rising in pitch, a tremor still perceptible. "A sea of hungry eyes, sharp claws, ready to devour us, to extinguish the last flame of our lineage." Elara, nestled in the warm blankets, squeezed her eyes shut, reliving the horror. A small, muffled sob escaped her lips, silently confirming the intensity of the danger. Lena, the weaver, who was sitting beside the girl, hugged her tenderly, feeling the persistent tremor in her tiny body. The wound on Anya's arm, now clean and bandaged with herbs, still throbbed with a dull ache. But the physical pain was a mere echo of the deep anguish she had felt. Then Anya reached the most difficult part of her story, the one that defied reason. She hesitated, her eyes seeking Boris's, as if looking for his permission to tell the unbelievable. And when all seemed lost, when icy despair invaded my soul and my strength was fading. She paused dramatically, taking a deep breath. He appeared, a bear. Not an ordinary bear, my brothers. A white colossus, larger than any of you have ever seen, with eyes that carried the wisdom of 1,000 winters and the strength of Yakutia itself. A murmur of skepticism ran through the small crowd. Some shook their heads, others exchanged glances of doubt and confusion. A giant polar bear, a guardian? The human mind, accustomed to the harsh and pragmatic reality of survival in the tundra, was reluctant to accept such a marvel, seeming more like a delusion. Anya felt the weight of disbelief, but her faith and the vivid memory of what had happened were unshakable. He placed himself between us and the wolves, she continued, her voice now firmer, laden with deep conviction, and roared. A roar that made the earth tremble beneath our feet, that dispersed the hungry pack as if they were dry leaves carried by a gale. They fled, terrified, fear overcoming hunger. Elara, hearing her grandmother, opened her eyes and, for the first time since they arrived, lifted her head. Her small lips moved, and she murmured with surprising clarity, "The White Guardian." The child's confirmation, so pure and artless, silenced the last murmurs of doubt. The villagers' eyes turned to Elara and then to Anya. A new seed of uncertainty planted in their minds. Could a child invent something so specific? Boris, who until then had maintained a serious and thoughtful expression, leaned forward, his gaze fixed on Anya. "And then, Anya?" His voice was calm, but laden with genuine curiosity and a deepening respect. Anya described the mysterious disappearance of the bear, the feeling that it was not just an animal, but something more, an ancient spirit of the tundra that had interceded. She spoke of renewed hope, of the mystical connection she had felt, a reminder that Yakutia, however cruel and relentless, held secrets and wonders that transcended human understanding. The matriarch concluded her narrative, her voice now soft, but with a conviction that resonated throughout the cabin, touching the hearts of those present. "We were saved, my brothers, saved by a miracle, by an intervention that defies our understanding. This is not just a tale, it is a truth that Elara and I will carry in our hearts forever." She looked at her granddaughter, who nodded slightly, her eyes still wide, but now without the terror of before. Replaced by the stillness of one who had witnessed the extraordinary, the community remained silent, absorbing every word, every emotion. Skepticism still hung like a cold mist, but the emotion in Anya's voice, Elara's silent confirmation, and the elderly woman's own arm wound were evidence that could not be easily ignored. The mystery of the White Guardian had arrived in the village, and with it, the seed of a new legend, a story of faith and resilience that began to take root in the community's soul. Boris, the elder, was the first to break the silence, his voice grave and thoughtful. "Anya, my sister, what you describe, it is something our ancestors spoke of in whispers, legends of tundra spirits walking among us. But never in my long life have I heard of such an intervention by a polar bear on such a scale, dispersing 1,000 wolves." He paused, his piercing eyes fixed on Anya's, seeking an answer that could reconcile the wonder with harsh reality. "Are you sure the cold and fear haven't played a trick on your memory, or Ilara's?" A murmur of agreement ran through the cabin. Anya felt a tightening in her chest. Doubt, cold and sharp as the tundra wind, began to manifest openly. Her ears, no longer as keen as before, caught only fragments of the whispers, but the expressions on faces, the averted gazes, spoke louder than any words. She saw disbelief in the eyes of some, pity in others, and confusion in most. Anya tried to respond, but words seemed caught in her throat. Exhaustion and shock had dulled her senses even further. She strained to hear the murmurs that followed Boris's speech, but the voices blended into an indistinct hum, like the distant wind. The matriarch felt a pang of frustration, an invisible barrier rising between her and her community. How could she convince them if she could barely grasp the extent of their doubt? Her eyes, however, were sharp enough to read the expressions on the faces of those present. Lena, the weaver, had eyes moist with compassion, but also palpable uncertainty. The young hunter, Tumen, scratched his sparse beard, his lips pressed together in a sign of skepticism. Anya realized with painful clarity that words, however true, would not be enough. The story was so grand, so out of the ordinary, that the human mind refused to accept it without something more. She felt the weight of responsibility, not just to tell, but to prove the truth of the White Guardian. The faith that had sustained her in the icy wilderness now needed to find a way into the skeptical hearts of her village. It was a new challenge, as terrifying as the 1,000 wolves, but of a different, more subtle and insidious nature. Ilara, sensing her grandmother's silent anguish, squeezed her hand tightly. The girl, with her innocence and the purity of her testimony, was the only one who fully understood. Anya looked at her granddaughter, and in the child's eyes, she saw not only the confirmation of the truth, but also a silent courage. The matriarch knew she was not alone. She took a deep breath, drawing strength from her ancestral roots, from the same wisdom that had guided her through countless winters. "I understand your doubt, my brothers," she said, her voice regaining some of its former firmness, though still hoarse. "It is a story that defies reason, but truth sometimes is greater than our understanding." She paused, her eyes scanning the faces of the community, seeking an opening. "I do not ask you to believe blindly. I ask you to observe, to feel, to remember the legends that were told to us of the hidden forces that govern our land." Anya knew she needed more than words. She needed a sign, tangible proof that could connect the miracle to the reality of their lives. She thought of the ceremonial axe, of the dry wolf blood on its blade, but knew that would only confirm the struggle, not divine intervention. Her eyes moved to the wound on her arm, still aching, and then to Ilara, who now huddled closer to her, as if seeking protection not only from the cold, but from the disbelief that surrounded them. The turning point was clear. The fight had not ended in the icy wilderness. It had merely shifted battlegrounds. Now it was a fight for faith, for memory, and for the soul of her community. She needed to find a way to show them the White Guardian, not as a distant legend, but as a living presence, a spirit of Yakutia that still watched over them. But how? The answer, she knew, would not come from words, but from actions, from a gesture that could transcend the barrier of skepticism. Anya closed her eyes for an instant, feeling the weight of the decision. The White Guardian had saved their lives, and now it was her turn to protect his story, to ensure that the hope he brought was not swept away by the wind of skepticism. She opened her eyes, and in them Boris saw a new determination, a flame that refused to be extinguished. The battle for her truth was just beginning, and Anya, the indomitable matriarch, was ready to fight. Anya opened her eyes, and Boris saw in them a new determination, a flame that refused to be extinguished. The matriarch raised her head, sweeping her gaze across the silent faces. Only the crackling of the fire broke the tension. "I understand the doubt in your hearts," Anya began, her voice hoarse but laden with authority. "Our life in Yakutia has taught us to trust what we see, but also that the tundra holds mysteries older than our legends, forces we cannot control, only respect." She paused. Ilara, sensing the change in tone, lifted her head, her eyes wide and attentive. Lena, beside her, squeezed the girl's hand with curiosity and apprehension. "The White Guardian is not an invention of fear," Anya continued, her voice gaining strength. "He is a manifestation, a spirit of the earth, perhaps, or a reminder that we are not alone, even in the deepest desolation." She looked at Boris. "You speak of legends. Our ancestors spoke of spirits. Why would it be so hard to believe that the tundra itself might have a guardian?" Boris pondered, his brow furrowed. "But Anya, a polar bear, so large, so different, and 1,000 wolves, it defies everything we know. And is what we know all that exists?" Anya retorted softly with defiance. "Yakutia is greater than our knowledge. Our eyes see only a small part. I saw what I saw. Ilara saw what she saw." She gestured to her granddaughter, who nodded seriously. "The wound on my arm is not a legend. It is proof of the battle. The blood of the wolves on my axe out there is proof of the horde." Anya knew that the physical proof of the struggle was tangible, but not that of the miracle. She needed something more. Something that would connect her experience to ancestral faith. "I know my words are not enough for some," she admitted, sweeping her gaze across the disbelieving faces. "But there is a way to seek the truth. A way our ancestors used." She rose slowly, the pain in her arm a reminder, but her determination was stronger. "Tomorrow, at sunrise, I will go to the stone circle. There, where the spirits of the earth meet, I will make an offering, and I will ask the White Guardian to give us a sign, not a sign for me, but for all of you, so that faith may flourish in our hearts, and so that we may know we are not helpless." A shocked silence fell over the cabin. The stone circle was a sacred and ancient place, rarely visited, a place of power and danger, where worlds touched. Anya's proposal was audacious, a challenge to faith. Boris looked at her with respect and concern. "Anya, you are weak, wounded. The path is long and dangerous, even for the youngest." "My strength comes not only from my body, Boris," Anya replied, her voice firm. "It comes from my heart, from the truth I carry, and from the life I protected. Ilara and the village need me to do this." She looked at her granddaughter, who watched her with admiration. "The White Guardian saved us. Now, it is my turn to defend his story, to celebrate his intervention as a beacon of hope in this eternal winter." The matriarch was ready. The matriarch was ready. A heavy silence filled the cabin, broken only by the crackling of the fire. Boris, his face wrinkled with worry, stood up, his eyes fixed on Anya. He knew what the stone circle represented, ancestral power and danger. "Anya, my sister," he said, his voice grave, "your courage is unbreakable, but the stone circle, it is for the strongest. You are wounded, exhausted. No one would expect such a sacrifice from you." Lena, with teary eyes, rushed to Anya, holding her cold hands. "Please, Anya, don't go. Let us believe. You don't need to prove anything. Your life is precious. Ilara needs you." Her voice trembled. Ilara, in silence, hugged her grandmother's legs, trembling. She didn't want Anya to leave for the cold. Anya, however, felt a renewed strength. She stroked Ilara's hair, then looked at Lena and Boris. "My life is precious for the truth, and the truth needs to be planted. If I don't go, doubt will corrode faith and the White Guardian will be a delusion. I cannot allow that. The hope he brought us is a gift we must honor." Her voice, though hoarse, carried unwavering conviction. The other villagers, previously skeptical, now exchanged glances, doubt replaced by growing admiration. They saw not only the fragility of an elderly woman, but the strength of a matriarch willing to protect the soul of the community. Some nodded, others murmured support. Boris sighed, knowing there was no way to dissuade Anya. He knew the stubbornness of the Yakut people. Then, if you must go, sister, go prepared. Take the offerings. May the spirits of the tundra guide and protect you. He turned. We will help you prepare, and we will pray for your return. Anya felt a warmth spread. The community, though apprehensive, began to unite around her faith. That night, as the wind howled, Lena's cabin became a center of silent activity. Lena tended to Anya's wound, applying fresh herbs. Other women brought warm furs, dried food, and reindeer fat for the offering. Boris handed Anya a carved bone amulet, a symbol of ancestral protection. Ilara, lying beside her grandmother, couldn't sleep. She watched Anya with wide eyes, the fear of separation mixed with pride. The girl knew what a heroine her grandmother was. Anya felt her granddaughter's gaze and hugged her. Don't worry, my little one. The White Guardian protects us, and I will return. I always do. At dawn, before the sun peeked out, Anya was ready. Dressed in warm furs, the ceremonial acts and offerings accompanied her. She bid farewell to Ilara with a kiss, feeling the girl's tears. Boris and Lena stood at the door, their faces pale. The matriarch looked at the sleeping village, at the cabins that represented her life and family. With a nod, she turned. With firm, albeit slow steps, she began the journey to the stone circle. A solitary silhouette against the white vastness of Yakutia, she carried hope and faith. The icy wind whipped her face, but Anya did not feel the cold. She felt only the urgency of the mission, the promise of a sign that would unite her people. Anya felt the icy wind whip her face, but a strange stillness filled her spirit. Each step in the deep snow was an effort. The wound on her arm throbbed with a dull ache, but the matriarch would not let it stop her. The white vastness of Yakutia stretched before her, a silent and relentless desert, where the sun still struggled to break through the darkness of the prolonged winter. The air cut her lungs with each breath, transforming into clouds of vapor that dissipated in the abyssal cold. She walked eastward, where she knew the stone circle awaited. It was not just a physical location, but a portal to her people's memory, a place where the veils between the visible and invisible worlds were thinnest. Her ancestors had trusted this place for generations, seeking wisdom and signs in moments of greatest despair. Anya felt their presence in every snowflake that touched her face, in every gust of wind that whispered ancient stories. The carved bone amulet, a gift from Boris, hung heavy around her neck, a reminder of her community's concern, but also of the faith that even hesitantly was beginning to sprout in some hearts. She thought of Ilara, of the tight embrace and the girl's tears. It was for her granddaughter, the last link of her lineage, that Anya persevered. The truth of the White Guardian was not just a story to be told, but a promise of hope that needed to be rooted in the village's soul. The terrain began to grow more uneven, with dark rock formations emerging from the snow like the teeth of a sleeping giant. Anya knew she was approaching. The silence of the tundra, once oppressive, now seemed to thicken, laden with an almost palpable expectation. She felt the energy of the place, a cold, ancient current that seemed to vibrate beneath her feet. Her ears, though weakened by age, caught the subtle sound of the wind dancing among the stones, an ancestral chorus that only she seemed to hear. The matriarch paused for an instant, scanning the horizon. The sun, finally, peeked out, painting the sky with pale shades of pink and orange, a spectacle of austere beauty that contrasted with the harshness of the land. She raised the ceremonial axe, its blade still bearing the marks of battle, a silent testament to her truth. It was not a weapon of aggression, but an instrument of purpose, a link to the strength of her ancestors. The pain in her arm intensified, a sharp reminder of her physical fragility, but Anya refused to yield. Her mind was focused, her will unbreakable. She sought not just a sign for the community, but a confirmation for herself, a reaffirmation that the miracle she had witnessed was not a delusion, but a divine intervention, a calling to protect faith in a world that increasingly clung only to the tangible. Finally, the stone circle came into view. Imposing and mysterious, it was a ring of gigantic rocks, some taller than a man, arranged in a pattern that defied human logic. Snow accumulated at their bases, but the stones themselves seemed bare, exposed to the elements, carrying the secrets of ages. A shiver ran down Anya's spine, not of fear, but of reverence. She was at the threshold. With the carefully prepared offerings in her gloved hands, Anya entered the circle. The air there was different, denser, colder, but also charged with an energy that enveloped her. She felt a deep connection with the earth, with the sky, with the spirits that inhabited that sacred place. Her eyes closed for a moment, and she took a deep breath, preparing for what was to come. The battle for faith was about to have its most crucial moment. She knelt in the center of the circle, her heart beating strongly, but at peace. Anya knelt in the heart of the stone circle, feeling the ancestral coldness of the rock beneath her gloves. The silence was profound, broken only by the whisper of the wind, which seemed to carry the voices of the ancients. She closed her eyes, seeking connection with the vast YAKUT and its spirits. In her mind, the image of 1,000 wolves and the majestic appearance of the White Guardian intertwined. The wound on her arm throbbed, a vivid reminder of the battle and salvation. It was for this truth and hope that she was there, a matriarch in search of a sign. With slow and reverent movements, Anya opened the fur bag. She took out pieces of dried reindeer meat and fish fat, symbolic offerings of life in the tundra. With steady hands, she placed them on a flat stone in the center of the circle. "Spirits of the earth, White Guardian," she whispered, her hoarse voice almost swallowed by the wind. "I come with gratitude and in search of truth. My granddaughter, Ilara, and I were saved from 1,000 wolves by inexplicable intervention. My community doubts. Their faith has been shaken. They need a sign, not for me, but so that hope may flourish, so that they may know they are not alone." She raised her gaze to the pale sky, where the sun tinged the clouds with a faint gold. The words poured from her chest, a sincere and desperate prayer. A solitary tear ran down her wrinkled face from the deep emotion and responsibility she carried. Anya remained kneeling, the cold penetrating her furs, waiting. Time stretched, each second an eternity. The wind howled and the ancient stones seemed to vibrate. She watched the horizon, searching for any sign. Nothing, only the white vastness and the relentless silence. A pang of discouragement began to seep in, a subtle doubt that threatened to corrode her faith. Was she just a delirious old woman? The image of the skeptical faces of her village, the looks of pity and disbelief, returned to her mind. Ilara, with her large, trusting eyes, was the only one who believed. The matriarch closed her eyes again, clenching her gloved hands. "No, I cannot doubt," she thought, her inner voice firm. "I saw it. Ilara saw it." She remembered the bear's power and protection, the terrified flight of the wolves. That had not been an illusion. It was real. She needed patience and faith. YAKUT did not reveal its secrets easily. Suddenly, a stronger gust of wind swept through the circle. It was not ordinary. It seemed to carry a weight, a presence. Small snowflakes danced, gathering in whirlwinds that spun around the stones, as if responding to her prayer. Anya opened her eyes, watching with apprehension and hope. The air grew denser, and a faint glow, almost imperceptible, seemed to emanate from the stones themselves, a pulse of silvery light mingling with the dawn. She extended her hand, feeling the vibration in the air, a strangely warm energy coming from within the earth. A distant sound, a deep, grave growl, echoed across the tundra, making the ground vibrate. It was not from an ordinary animal. It came from the depths of Yakutia, laden with primordial strength. Anya felt a shiver. Her heart raced, but not from fear. It was reverence. The White Guardian was listening. The sign began to manifest, not in an obvious way, but in a manner that only those with open hearts could understand. A new hope, faint as the dawn light, began to shine in the icy heart of Yakutia. She waited, breath held, ready for what would come next. Anya waited, breath held, ready for what would come next. The deep, grave growl, which had seemed distant before, now resonated not only in the air, but within her own chest, vibrating in her bones. It was not a sound of threat, but of primordial power, a voice of Yakutia itself. The ancient stones of the circle, which already emitted a faint glow, began to pulse with a more intense silvery light, as if the heart of the earth was beating there, all around her. The snow around them seemed to absorb and reflect this light, transforming the ground into a shimmering mirror that danced with the pale colors of dawn. The matriarch felt the cold recede, replaced by a soft, comforting warmth that radiated from the stones. It was not the heat of a fire, but a vital energy, ancient and pure. Her eyes, once tired, now shone with renewed clarity, absorbing every detail of that manifestation. She extended her hands, and the silvery light seemed to envelop them like an invisible cloak. In her mind, images arose: the vastness of the tundra, the resilience of her people, the relentless winters, and the promise of life that always returned. She saw Ilara's face, the girl's innocence and unwavering faith, and the certainty that her mission was more than personal. The growl reached its peak, transforming into a guttural whisper that seemed to echo from all directions, filling the air with a majestic presence. And then, above the circle, where the sky began to lighten, an aurora borealis of never-before-seen colors began to form. These were not the usual greens and purples, but pure white and golden hues, intertwining and dancing with an ethereal intensity. It was a breathtaking spectacle, a celestial tapestry that seemed woven by the very hand of the spirits. Anya knew, with a certainty that transcended reason, that this was the sign. A sign that could not be denied, that spoke directly to the soul of all. Tears streamed down her face, not from sadness or fear, but from deep gratitude and reverence. The wound on her arm, once throbbing, now seemed only a distant memory. She felt connected to something much greater, part of an ancestral tapestry that united life, earth, and the mysteries of the universe. The White Guardian was not just a bear, but the very essence of Yakutia, a protective spirit that manifested when hope was at its most fragile. The white and golden aurora pulsed in the sky, illuminating the tundra with a supernatural light. Anya knew that, although the village was asleep, the light of that aurora would be visible, an anomaly that would awaken curiosity and, perhaps, faith. She would not need words to describe what she had seen. The sky would speak for her. The White Guardian had responded, not just to her, but to everyone. Slowly, the light from the stones began to diminish, and the aurora in the sky to dissipate, leaving behind a soft glow and a feeling of profound peace. The growl ceased, replaced by the familiar silence of the tundra, but now a silence laden with meaning. Anya remained kneeling for a few more moments, absorbing the magnitude of what she had witnessed. She rose, feeling renewed strength in every fiber of her being. The ceremonial axe in her hand felt lighter, and Boris's amulet warmer. She turned to the path back, her heart overflowing with unshakable certainty. Doubt had been swept away by the wind, replaced by a faith that shone brighter than the winter sun. Anya had the sign, and now she had the mission to take it back to her community. The battle for faith was won at the stone circle, and the matriarch was ready to share that victory. She knew that Yakutia, in its vastness and mystery, had spoken, and her people, even the most skeptical, could not ignore the voice of the White Guardian. Hope had been rekindled, brighter than ever. Hope had been rekindled, brighter than ever. Anya, her heart overflowing with certainty, began the journey back. The white and golden aurora in the pale sky was a powerful reminder of divine intervention. As she approached the village, an unusual stir was palpable. Lights from the cabins shone. People gathered at their doors looking eastward. Their faces, once doubtful, now displayed awe and wonder. The celestial spectacle had been witnessed. Lena was the first to spot her. Eyes wide, a cry escaped. "Anya, she's coming back!" The news spread like wildfire. In moments, Boris and Ilara, with almost everyone, were at the village entrance. Ilara ran, throwing herself into her grandmother's arms. "Grandma! Grandma!" Anya felt Ilara's warm tears, and her own streamed down, tears of joy and gratitude. Boris approached, his face serious, eyes reflecting the aurora's light. "Anya, the sky, we saw it. What was that?" His voice, laden with reverence, echoed. Anya stroked Ilara's hair, raising her gaze to the community. "It was the White Guardian, Boris," she said, her voice hoarse but firm. "He gave us a sign, for all of you, so that faith may flourish, and we may know we are not helpless." The villagers murmured, their gazes fixed on Anya and the sky. The aurora, though now invisible, had left an indelible mark on their souls. It was not a legend, but something their eyes had seen, an anomaly that defied explanation. Anya, with Ilara still clinging to her, confirmed what they had witnessed. Boris, head bowed, nodded. "I doubted, Anya. Forgive me." His voice was a whisper of regret. Lena, with tears in her eyes, held the matriarch's hands. "We will never doubt again. The White Guardian protects us, and you, Anya, are our guardian of faith." Villagers approached, with admiration. Skepticism had been swept away, replaced by renewed faith and unity. The village, once divided by doubt, now united by a shared truth, a rekindled hope. Anya looked at Ilara, who watched her with a radiant smile. The girl knew her grandmother was right, and now everyone knew. The truth of the White Guardian was a pillar of the community, a reminder that even in the desolation of Yakutia, life and hope could flourish, protected by greater forces. The eternal winter seemed less daunting. The matriarch, exhausted but at peace, felt her mission was accomplished and faith restored. The matriarch, exhausted but at peace, felt her mission was accomplished and faith restored. In the days that followed, Anya's village was transformed. Winter, once an endless burden, was now viewed with different eyes, no less harsh, but laden with a new and profound resilience. The story of the White Guardian and the celestial aurora became the new pillar of the community, told and retold around the campfires, their embers warming not only bodies but souls. Children, once fearful of wolf tales, now listened with admiration to the legend of the colossal bear, the protector of Yakutia, and of Anya's unwavering courage. Ilara, in particular, flourished under this new light. The girl, a witness to the miracle alongside her grandmother, carried the truth of that day in her eyes. She became the youngest guardian of the story, repeating every detail with clarity and conviction that captivated everyone. Anya watched her granddaughter with silent pride, knowing that the seed of faith had been planted in fertile ground. The The connection between them, already deep, became indissoluble, a link of ancestral wisdom and future hope. Boris, the skeptical elder, was now one of the story's most fervent defenders. His eyes, once laden with worry, now shone with the light of understanding and respect. He organized the community to strengthen the village's defenses, no longer out of fear, but from a renewed sense of responsibility and unity. Hunts became more collaborative, provisions more evenly distributed. Winter's adversity, though present, was no longer an enemy to be feared alone, but a challenge to be faced together. Lena, with her generous heart, dedicated herself to caring for Anya, ensuring that the matriarch fully recovered from her wound and exhaustion. She prepared herbal teas, massaged aching limbs, and patiently listened to Anya's reflections on the nature of faith and resilience. Anya's cabin, once a silent refuge, became a center of wisdom, where villagers came to seek advice and share their hopes. Winter finally began to yield, the days gradually lengthening, and the snow, though still deep, seemed less oppressive. The first stronger sunbeams bathed the tundra, revealing landscapes of stunning beauty. The community, united and strengthened, prepared for spring, a rebirth not only of nature, but of its own spirit. Anya, sitting at her cabin door, watched Ilara play in the snow with other children. The girl's laughter echoed in the icy air, a sweet and promising sound. The matriarch touched the bone amulet around her neck, feeling the warmth it seemed to radiate. She knew that Yakutia would continue to be a place of challenges, of relentless winters and hidden dangers. But now, her people had something more. They had a story of courage, selflessness, and a miraculous intervention that reminded them they were not alone. Faith, once flickering, now burned with full force, illuminating the way. Overcoming was not just surviving, but flourishing, finding meaning and hope in the most extreme conditions. Human connection, strengthened by ordeal and shared truth, proved to be the village's true treasure. Anya closed her eyes, a soft smile on her wrinkled lips. Life, in its essence, was a cycle of challenges and triumphs, of darkness and light. In Yakutia, under the watchful eye of the White Guardian, hope would always find a way. Her lineage through Ilara would carry this light to future generations, an eternal testament to human resilience. Her lineage through Ilara would carry this light to future generations, an eternal testament to human resilience. And so it was. The years unfolded over inhospitable Yakutia, each winter bringing its own relentless challenges, but none as terrifying as that of the 1,000 wolves. The village, once marked by doubt and a certain silent isolation, flourished under the mantle of renewed faith and unwavering unity. The story of Anya and the White Guardian was not just a distant legend, but the very essence of their collective identity, a beacon of hope that guided every step and every decision. Ilara grew, not only in stature, but in wisdom and spirit. The eyes that had witnessed the miracle of the celestial aurora and the desperate fury of the wolves now shone with a profound understanding of life and its intrinsic mysteries. She spent precious hours alongside Anya, absorbing every ancestral teaching, every story about the tundra and its best-kept secrets. The matriarch, with her soft voice and wrinkled hands, transmitted not only the practical knowledge of survival in extreme conditions, but the philosophy of her people, the interconnectedness of all living things, the importance of respect for wild nature, and the unparalleled strength that resides in compassion and altruism. Ilara, in turn, shared these stories with the younger children, her expressive gestures and genuine passion in her voice ensuring that the flame of faith and memory would never be extinguished. Anya, though aging and her steps slower, kept her mind sharp and her spirit indomitable. She became the most sought-after counselor in the village, her cabin a sanctuary of peace and wisdom, where everyone found solace. The wounds of the past had healed, but the physical scars on her arm were silent reminders of her extraordinary courage, recounted with reverence by those who saw them. Boris, now a respected elder and voice of prudence, and Lena, a maternal and generous figure to all, continued to support Anya, ensuring that the village prospered and that the teachings of the White Guardian were honored in every season. The community's defenses were enhanced, not out of fear, but from a renewed sense of mutual care and responsibility, a legacy of unity. Yakutia continued to be a place of extremes, with winters that tested the limits of human endurance and summers that offered a brief but vibrant explosion of life. But Anya's people had learned that true strength lay not just in enduring the biting cold, but in warming each other with the inextinguishable flame of solidarity and faith. They faced blizzards with more courage, hunts with more determination, and losses with more resilience, knowing they were part of something much greater. Human connection, forged in the fire of adversity and sealed by the miracle, proved to be their greatest and most valuable treasure. Ilara, now a young woman of notable presence, began to take a more active role in community leadership, her firm steps in the snow echoing her grandmother's unwavering determination. She possessed the same courage, the same empathy, and the same deep connection to the land. In her eyes, Anya saw not only the future of her lineage, but the future of her people, a future where ancestral wisdom united with renewed hope, weaving a destiny of perseverance. The story of the White Guardian was a legacy, a promise that, even in the darkest moments, the light of hope and divine protection could emerge, coming from the most unexpected and mysterious places. One day, as the summer sun bathed the tundra with ephemeral warmth, Anya and Ilara sat at the cabin door, watching children play with joy. Anya, with a serene smile and a distant gaze, held Ilara's hand tenderly. "Yakutia is harsh, my dear," she said, her voice almost a whisper, laden with years of experience. "But she is also generous. She teaches us to be strong, to be united, to never lose faith, for life always finds a way." Ilara squeezed her grandmother's hand, her eyes fixed on the infinite horizon of the tundra. She knew that the matriarch's truth was the truth of her people, a truth that would transcend time and ice, an eternal testament to human resilience and nature's inexplicable intervention in the depths of eternal winter. The White Guardian, though never physically seen again, lived in the hearts of all, a protective spirit that watched over the village, ensuring that hope in Yakutia would never die.